Closed captioning for Justice and Law Weekly is provided in part by the Clifford Law Offices in support of quality public television for the Chicago area.
It is my privilege to welcome Governor Pat Quinn as our guest for this program. In 2010, Patrick Quinn was elected Illinois' 41st governor. Prior to being elected governor, Pat Quinn served as the Illinois Lieutenant Governor for 7 years. He has also held the offices of Illinois Secretary of State and Illinois Treasurer. Governor, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, it's an honor to be here, a pleasure to be here, Bob, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to visit with you.
Well, I have to tell you, I mean, it's well known that, or widely known, that I'm a big supporter of yours.
Sure
and at the risk of being patronizing, I regularly tell people that that is so because you have restored integrity and honor, not only in that office, but in politics in general.
Oh, thanks.
And it's really nice, you know, one of the questions I'll have somewhere down the line is to talk to you about how it is that we inspire young people to become involved in politics, because we seem to demonize our politicians so much.
Yeah.
But we'll get there eventually. But in the meantime, I'd like to talk to you about the great state of Illinois and talk about some of the positive things. We hear enough doom and gloom, especially right now out of Washington with this budget fight and crisis. Let's tell the people about some of the great things that are taking place in our community, in our state, from top to bottom.
Well, I think Illinois is a great place to live and work. We're proud of our state. We have 13 million people in Illinois. We're the 5th largest state in the union. And all of us in our whole country have suffered through a great recession, probably the biggest recession that we've had in my lifetime. My mom is 93 years old. She went through the Great Depression, but most people this last couple of years have been pretty tough economically. And the thing I'm most proud of, I think, is our people never give up. We never say die. We understand that when you have tough times, you don't turn on each other. You band together in the best traditions of democracy and work to get out of a tough economic time and help your neighbor. And we've been able to do that in our state. We passed a law a couple years ago called the Job Recovery Law. And the purpose is to build roads and rebuild roads and fix our highways and our bridges, build new rail systems as well as our water systems, improve them, build schools. We're here at a school where we're taping the program, and we want to rebuild schools, and we want to make all of our institutions energy efficient. We want to use renewable energy from the sun or the wind in moving energy along. And we also want to have water conservation and clean water. So that's what we've been working on at the state level. Our number one job is jobs in Illinois. The best way to fight crime, the best way to keep families together is a job, and that's what I believe in, and I think that's our number one task of a governor.
It's pretty well known that you've been making a concerted effort to reach out to the business community. You've been meeting with CEOs. I think you just got back from a trip to Israel where you were looking at their infrastructure and how they're spawning entrepreneurial effort and activity. Why have you been why such a big focus on job creation and CEOs and the like?
Well, I think the best way to help families is a good livelihood, a job that you can support your family on. And we have work to do in that area. Unemployment is way too high in our country and definitely in our state. And the job of a governor is to be the best salesperson you can for the people and businesses of Illinois. And so this past year, for example, we increased our exports from Illinois to the whole world by 20% last year. We want to double our exports in the next 5 years. And this year alone, we've been growing it by 33% because the people around the world want the goods and services that we do right here in Illinois. And we have to understand that in order to sell those goods, we have to get out there to other countries. I was in Israel. I'm going to be going to China and Japan and Mexico and in many other countries. I don't stay very long, but my job is to let the world know that Illinois is strong. We want people to visit Illinois. We want more tourists here. We have great conventions and hospitality, places to see. And when those folks come from another land or another state, they create jobs because we have 303,000 jobs in hospitality and tourism and conventions in Illinois today. And we want to grow that and make it bigger and have more jobs for people here.
You know, I've heard talk about McCormick Place and the underutilization of it, and I know that that's a big concern and focus of yours, and I believe you've actually been in conversation with our new mayor, Emmanuel, about that. Could you tell us what your vision is for McCormick Place?
Well, just today we had a meeting. I had the mayor of Chicago in, as well as the Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, and some of the other legislative leaders. And we talked about making sure that McCormick Place, that has many of these conventions, is as strong as it can be. We have to deal with some things in the law to make it better, so make more attractive to other conventions to come here. These conventions are job farms. They create a lot of economic opportunity for people right here in our own backyard. And I think it's very important that we look for everything we can to get our people a job they can support their family on. So another area that I believe in, we had President Clinton here a few weeks ago. He's a great believer in green collar jobs. Those are jobs in water conservation or energy efficiency, taking these big buildings we have and making sure they're more energy efficient. That creates economic growth in our own backyard. Same way with our homes. We want to weatherize our homes with neighborhood people, young men and women from the neighborhood. And we don't want them using guns to hurt people. We want them using a caulking gun to weatherize their apartments and their businesses and their homes. That'll save energy for us. I started a group some years ago called the Citizen Utility Board to fight for consumers. But part of fighting for consumers is lowering our energy bills, and weatherization and energy conservation is the way to go.
I hear you're a big fan of electric cars, and yet I've been talking to a few friends who are familiar with the coal industry, and they're kind of anti-electric car, and they say, you know, to power that electric car, you're going to have to burn a lot of coal, the very people that you're saying that you want to get rid of. How's that all work?
Yeah, well, electric vehicles, I think we should definitely explore in Illinois and around our country. I don't see them as necessarily replacing all the cars that we have today, but electric vehicles are on the rise in a lot of places around the world, and we want to make sure that we're prepared for that in Illinois. So we've put together 270 charging stations in our state. So some of them are at Walgreens. I was at a Walgreens not long ago in Oak Park, one on Halsted Street. Right there in their parking lot, they have an electric vehicle charging station. And your point is, okay, in order to have electric vehicles, you have to have electricity. And how do we get that electricity? Well, they're either through natural gas or coal or some kind of resource. And so we have to do this in a 21st century way. If we're burning coal, we've got to do it in a way that doesn't contribute to air pollution. So I was down on the southeast side of Chicago a week or two ago, and we have a great new project started called Leucadia, a clean coal project that the process does not have emissions, that it burns all of the coal in such a way that it has very few emissions at all. And those kind of technologies we have to employ if we're going to deal with coal. Right.
You know, interestingly, I mentioned that, you know, the thing about McCormick Place, and one of the things that I've heard over the years is that it's so difficult for conventions to come here because our costs are higher than they are, let's say, at whether it's Rosemont or Las Vegas, or what are you doing about that?
That's a key issue. I want to make sure that we understand that it takes a number of very well-skilled men and women who have skills that can put these conventions on. These are very big endeavors. So I never want to sort of give the workers who make it happen a hard time. We want them to get a fair wage. A wage based on their good work. At the same time, some of those who host the conventions, the contractors who kind of organize this, we want to make sure that they're audited and we know all their costs. And matter of fact, the meeting we had today, that came up. We want to have a Bill of Rights for exhibitors so they get a fair shake and good workers doing a good job. We also want to make sure that those who are kind of managing the conventions disclose all their costs in an honest way. And that's where auditing comes in. It's always good to have somebody looking over your shoulder and make sure you're doing it right. And I'm confident we can get there. We don't want to have a reputation in Chicago of being too expensive to have conventions, because this is the center of the country. We are blessed by our transportation resources, our location, and we can get a lot of folks visiting us if we do it right.
You know, this may sound corny, but we have some major corporations here, like I'll call it the hotel corporations, Marriott, Hyatt, the Four Seasons Group, the Ritz Group. Why can't you talk those folks into building more new hotels? We do need them, okay, for these conventions. And they may not want to, but we do need them, so there's a good demand there. And that'll help put people back to work and create some of these jobs. Can't you like bring those folks in and say, hey, we're all for one, one for all, start building a new building?
Well, I think that's part of it. If you have a growing economy, then a lot of businesses expand and grow. You know, you mentioned the hotels, but I want to tell you one that really is a great story. Ford Motor Company is located in our state. They have a plant here in Chicago. It's been here since 1925. My grandfather, he drove a Model T. My father drove a Ford, and I drove a Ford. So I went down there a year or so ago, and Ford decided they picked our state to expand production. They're building a new SUV, an energy efficient, fuel efficient SUV that's much more fuel efficient than any car they've ever, SUV they've ever made. And they're building it here in Illinois. And they said the reason they're building it here is because of our workforce. They're well trained, they're hardworking, they know how to get the job done. And it seems to me that all of our businesses, whether they be hotels, we want them to build. Another place is our car and vehicle companies. We have Chrysler, Fiat Chrysler here. We have Navistar that makes trucks. We have Mitsubishi down in Normal, Illinois. Ford. So we've really worked with our manufacturers to help them grow and start new jobs, and it's been pretty inspiring over the last couple of years.
Where does gambling fit into all of this? There's all this talk coming out of Springfield, and we all know what was going on during this past session. Are you able to speak to that?
No, sure. Yeah.
Could you tell us more about that?
Well, that bill has not arrived on my desk. In the last day of the legislative session, the Illinois Senate, after the House passed a bill on gambling expansion, the Senate passed it. And they're still holding on to it. I'm curious why they're doing this, because if it's a good bill, usually you want to send it to the governor right away. But really, for the last couple of months, they've held on to this bill. They won't send it my way. You know, my job is I'm the goalie of Illinois. I've got to make sure that anything that is passed by the legislature is truly good for the people. And so you got to go through these bills, literally line by line, sentence by sentence, to make sure there are not any bad things. When it comes to gambling, you got to be careful. There's some bad characters out there, and they want to get into the gambling and take care of themselves at the expense of the public. So my job is to make sure everything is honest, with integrity. And I'm doing that by reviewing the pages of this bill. When it arrives, I'll act promptly. But I think one thing we got to understand, Bob, if we're going to have a good state, a good economy, we can't kid ourselves. It's all about education. Jobs follow brain power. There's no magic solution that, you have a bunch of gambling casinos, you're going to be a better state. It's really smart people working hard. You know, the community colleges of our state, we're taping the show at a great community college here at Kennedy King. They're very, very important to Illinois and to our people. We have 1 million students in Illinois going to community college, 48 of them all across Illinois. They go at night. I used to teach community college at night. I was so impressed by the students. They'd have a job in the day and they'd go to school at night to improve their skills. That's how we're going to have a better economy, because the employers are looking for smart, well-skilled, well-educated people. And those are the jobs of the future.
There are 122,000 people currently about to enroll in Chicago City colleges. And,
pretty impressive.
It's outstanding. And they've got a great culinary institute here.
I know.
And so there's a lot of opportunity, I think, coming out of the colleges.
It bears repeating. Culinary arts. What is that all about? Well, if you know how to prepare food, you have a job for life, because this city and this metropolitan area is dying for people who know how to handle food, cook food, do well. Another one is welding. You know, I was down in southern Illinois. We had 15 young fellows coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan. They were kind of banged up, to be honest. They had been in combat. One young fellow, Will Attig, he signed up right out of high school. He was in the military about 7, 8 years, sergeant, led troops in battle. Came home, couldn't find a job here in Illinois. But we got our community college going, Wren Lake Community College, with the Pipe Fitters Union. We put together a program called Helmets to Hard Hats. helping our veterans get a job. And these young fellows learned how to be welders. And I just got a text message the other day from young Will Attig, and he told me he got his first paycheck. He had a union card, he got a paycheck, he knows how to be a welder. And I can tell you, anybody watching, if you want a job for the rest of your life, you learn how to be a welder, and you'll be welding from here to kingdom come.
Well, there you go. You talk about education, though. Let's talk about, we're both lawyers, and one of the things that I am shocked about is the fact that we're not aggressive in teaching our children about democracy, about civics, about the three branches of government. You're the governor, you're a lawyer by background. What are you going to do about that?
Well, there's a curse in Mexico. May your life be filled with lawyers. So we want to be careful.
Now that's not nice.
No, but we're both lawyers, and I think we understand that we have a duty as lawyers, officers of the court, to make sure that we tell the law and preach the law to everyone. This is the essence of a democracy, laws that the people make. And it's really, every time I sign a bill into law, I think it's a special time that people have elected representatives, they've come together, they've passed something that matters to people in the neighborhoods, and I'm signing it and making it a law that'll last for a long, long time. And I think this process we do need to tell the public about all the time, that we're a democracy, the first one on earth, the best one on earth, and we have young men and women. I've gone to their funerals, 300 funerals in Illinois of soldiers who have given their lives since just September 11th, 2001, just from Illinois, defending our democracy. And it's important that we not see democracy as something other people do. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And it's not just voting in election time. It's getting involved in causes and in issues of the day. I started the Citizen Utility Board. It's been about 30 years ago now. That's a group that fights for consumers against unfair electric or unfair phone rates. Same way with they deal with natural gas and all the utilities. So Cub, you can join for $5 a year. I've done that every year since it began 30 years ago, and it's more than paid itself back in dividends and saving money for consumers. And that's part of democracy. And so there's lots of ways, especially with the internet, if you want to help soldiers and troops, we have a website, operationhomefront.org, operationhomefront.org. Go online, any of the viewers tonight, and if you want to help somebody who's fighting for our freedom and our democracy, find out all the ideas that you can get involved in to help support our troops.
Yeah. How do you stay excited about your job? You whenever I see you and meet you, you have enthusiasm, you have excitement. You do, and yet that sometimes you deal with a lot of depressing things that are going on.
You're not kidding. Yeah, it's not easy coming after somebody who got impeached and removed from office, now been convicted. We have two governors who've been in bad trouble. One's in jail, one's going to jail. My job is to restore the faith of the people of Illinois in their own government. And I want to be a humble governor who's proud of our people. And I think a governor should be a people person. And I want to salute you, Bob, because you fought for ordinary people in a lot of different places when they don't get a fair shake, that some big bureaucracy or some big corporation, you name it, is maltreating them, treating them in a poor way. You got to have fighters who fight for the common good. And I admire your good work, and that's what I try to aspire to.
Well, that's kind of you to say. Speaking of the difficulties of running your office and running our state, we just came through this terrible budget crisis that's going on in the nation, but I heard some chatter that, and I want to say it's Senator Mark Kirk, has suggested the possibility of legislation for states to go bankrupt. Have you heard about that? And if so, what do you think about it?
Well, I don't think that's going to happen here or anywhere else. I just came back from the National Governors Association. Clearly, when you have a recession, the states have the toughest time. We have to take care of people who are falling through the cracks. They've lost their job. They still need health care. That's why we have Medicaid. A lot of folks sometimes get really down on themselves. It's very sad. But we don't want anybody taking their life because they lost their job. So we have programs that help people get back on their feet and recover. I believe in people, and I think it's important to have a government that fights for the people, not for the big shots, for everyday people who live from paycheck to paycheck. And When they lose that paycheck, we're not going to give up on them. We're going to help them find a new job. So it's clearly a tough time for the states. But this is, in my opinion, being governor of Illinois, best job on earth. You can help ordinary people advance themselves, help their family, help their education. Can't go wrong.
Yeah. How do we get back to prosperous times? You know, I've heard that when you go and you get the state budget, the reality is that there's so much of it that's structured and fixed that in spite of what we as citizens might think, the reality is that you as a governor can only move the needle a little bit. How do we correct some of those infrastructure things?
Well, it's important. We've passed a law that invests in a lot of important building, public works that we can do that put people to work. I believe in that. I went to Georgetown University a long time ago. I was a freshman when another fellow was a senior there. His name was Bill Clinton, William Jefferson Clinton, and he became president, as you know, got elected, and he really understood how to grow the American economy. And President Clinton had said, I've heard him speak a number of times, it's very important that we understand that the key to prosperity in the 21st century, the place we live in, is investing in things like energy efficiency, renewable energy, and energy from the sun and the wind, that's renewable, and water. Water is very important. When I went to Israel there last week, we signed an agreement between the Lake Michigan, our lake, and the Sea of Galilee, located in Israel. We're going to work together on improving water. That brings people together.
Well, what's that all about? I mean, they're over there, we're over here.
Well, we can learn from other people. You know, we're lucky in Illinois. We have abundant water. Lake Michigan, we have the Illinois River system that connects the Great Lake Michigan to the Great River, Mississippi. We have 583 miles of the Mississippi River water in our state as our boundary. A lot of places on earth don't have anywhere near that, and they're jealous of us, and we can teach them a lot about conservation and use of water. You know, there's a quote from Mark Twain, the great American writer. He lived more than 100 years ago. He said, whiskey's for drinking and water's worth fighting for. So we're going to be fighting for water. We want to make sure we protect it.
Well,
clean water.
Speaking about fighting for water or fighting about water, as you know, within the last week, there have been some terrible floods here, both in the greater Chicagoland area and elsewhere. Could you tell us how government's reacting to that, or what you know is taking place?
Well, we got to be careful because, you know, when the great rain that came and a lot of basements got flooded, and unfortunately, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District had to let some of the water that it has, that isn't very, it's polluted, frankly, into Lake Michigan, our source of drinking water. And to me, that's very serious. We've got to work with the Water Reclamation District so that it treats its sewage. It doesn't disinfect the sewage properly. And this is a big environmental issue in our state. I want to work with them to get that going. I talked to the mayor of Chicago about it as well. And clean water all over Illinois, and controlling floods and things like that, stormwater treatment. There's a lot of jobs in this. If we do it right, we have a lot of good jobs, and we have a better environment. Clean water, clean air, making sure we have a good public transportation system to get people to work on trains and buses. Very, very important, having a good economy in a world that has $4 or $5 a gallon gasoline.
Speaking of that, the gasoline prices, they seem to vary so widely. Is there ever a time when you as governor say, hey, I want a briefing on that, and because I don't like these disparities?
Well, you know, the consumer group that I got involved in and started, called CUB, Citizen Utility Board, I've proposed bills, and we haven't passed it yet, I'd like to see it passed, that gives CUB the authority to fight for consumers against the big oil companies. You know, it's hard for one person to take on a big oil company. If you're Bob Clifford, you can do it. You know how to do it. You're a good lawyer. But a lot of ordinary folks, the only way we can really fight back is band together in a group like the Citizen Utility Board, and I think their mission should include the price of gasoline, the price of what the oil companies give us, because CUB's a real sharp group. They can pool money together, they can hire lawyers and accountants and engineers, and we have a lot of public interest lawyers. They don't work for a big salary, but they work for the public, the common good, and they get to the facts, and CUB has used them to get refunds for consumers, to stop rate increases by utilities. If we turn them loose on the oil companies, I think we get a fair shake and a better deal.
You know, I tell you what flashed through my mind as you were describing that. There was a tax that just expired on airplane tickets. This is at the federal level now. But instead of letting the tax lapse and the ticket prices go down, the airlines, this is nationally reported, all raised their ticket prices by the same amount of that tax. Now, why don't guys like you get out there and fight for us and say, don't do that?
Well, I will. Okay,
I'll that's a good
down.
one. I'll write that down.
No, I actually think I'm going to put somebody on my staff as the official consumer advocate of Illinois, because these things come up. You read them in the paper, you hear about them, and, you know, everyday people are working jobs and raising kids and living from check to check. They can't on their own do one thing, but if we use the power of our government and organize consumer groups, we can make great strides for the public, for the common good. And, you know, that's the job of a governor. I got elected last November. It was a tough election. I really am grateful that people voted for me. I didn't have the most money, but we had the best ideas, I thought, and we had the passion behind the ideas. And my goal is to improve our education in Illinois, fight as hard as I can for consumers and taxpayers, and most of all, get our economy back on track, get good jobs families can depend upon.
Do you take the time during a period like this, the summer, things are a little bit slower, where you go back and you look at the very things that you promised people and you promised yourself that you were going to accomplish, and say, you give yourself a report card on how you're doing on those things?
Well, we do that quarterly. Matter of fact, we have kind of a retreat and we go over, okay, what have we said we're going to do, how have we done getting it done? You know, I signed a bill this year, a very important bill, a landmark bill, abolishing the death penalty in Illinois.
Right.
Frankly, it was controversial. There were people on both sides, people of good faith. But I spent a good amount of time, about 2 months, hearing both sides, studying the issue, and I signed that law. It's the law of Illinois. And so I know that we can make important things happen if we work together as a community. And that's all that I plan to do. I'm an organizer, and I think when you organize the public in a democracy behind good, big causes that make a difference for people, you can accomplish great things. Yeah.
One last area, Governor. Some are kind of quiet time, but then you've got the legislative session coming up in the fall, and then, of course, what's on the horizon for us? What are we going to hear more doom and gloom, or are we going to hear some really strong positive things coming out of Springfield this coming year?
Well, I really don't like doom and gloom. I'm not a naysayer. I'm not a pessimist. I think we got to be optimistic, even in tough times. And just today, I told the legislative leaders that I think we really need to have a clean air, clean water initiative in Illinois, that we would invest money in improving our environment and creating local jobs in local neighborhoods for clean air, clean water. And I'm going to challenge the legislature to do that this fall. We can do it. You know, some say, oh, it's kind of hard. Well, you know, nothing good in life comes easy. You've got to do the hard things if you want to have a better life. There's a lot more to go, and ethics in government always counts. We always have to make sure, especially in Illinois, we have honesty is the best policy and the only policy.
Correct. Governor Pat Quinn, you're the best. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Governor Quinn is a wonderful person. I'm sure you agree, and we are so lucky to have him, and I want to personally thank him for taking the time to update us on the many critical issues facing Illinois. We appreciate your thoughtfulness and your hard work on behalf of the citizens of this great state. I'm Bob Clifford. Thank you for watching the Chicago Bar Association's Justice and Law Weekly.